Belinda and HarperAudio Australia present this unabridged recording of The Last of the Bonegilla Girls, written by Victoria Purman and read by Jennifer Vuletic. In memory of my grandparents, Stefan Scheirich, 1913 to 1990, and Maria Scheirich, née Simon, 1912 to 1990, and for their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Chapter 1. 9th of April, 1954. 16-year-old Elizabeta Schmidt blinked open her sleepy eyes. The camp. The words were being murmured from one family to another on the rust-red train. Like a Chinese whisper, they had spread from carriage to carriage, seat after seat, over hats and scarved heads and little children's curls, in hushed and tired voices like a wave. Their journey was almost over. 6 weeks earlier, the Schmidt family had left their home in Hessenthal to take the train to Bremerhaven on Germany's North Sea coast, and begun their journey on the Fair Sea around Europe to Malta, then Port Said in Egypt, and to Melbourne via Perth. After a rough voyage over the Great Australian Bight, during which Elizabeta's mother had been sick every day, they'd berthed at Port Melbourne and then crossed a wharf and climbed aboard the train with many carriages. It was almost midnight now, and Elizabeta was tired and anxious, having had only snatches of sleep on the journey. What would they find when the train finally stopped? The leather seats were a small comfort. She and her family had been forced onto all kinds of trains before with nothing so luxurious. They had had no windows and only wooden planks to sit on. Elizabeta didn't mind this Australian train at all. She pulled her brand-new winter coat tighter around her and lifted the collar to cover her ears. The sobbing from behind her had begun an hour before, and the woman hadn't stopped. Elizabeta didn't recognize the words, but thought it might be Russian, perhaps, or Ukrainian. Elizabeta had been surrounded by languages her whole life. She still remembered a few words in Hungarian, was fluent in German, and had picked up some English in the classes provided on the Fair Sea on the voyage over and from lessons from her father. She recognized the harshness of Polish with all its zeds and zheds, the passionate roar of Italian and the musicality of Greek, in which everything seemed to end in ki. People had picked up languages like scraps of food, anything to help survive the war. The train slowed and lurched and then pulled up with a brake squeal like fingernails on a blackboard, and the woman behind Elizabeta began howling in earnest now. Someone whispered in German. No matter where they came from, everyone understood some German. Sie war in den Lagern. Sie mag es nicht Züge. Sie verstehen? She was in the camps. She doesn't like trains. You understand? There were murmurs and nods of agreement all around. The rattle of the train stilled, and Elizabeta stared out the window into the black nothingness. There wasn't a star in the sky. Dim lights brightened an uncovered platform on its own in the empty dark, but there were no buildings to be seen. There was a strange whistling in the dark, a rustle of leaves, perhaps, in the distance. The sobbing woman howled again, which set off a couple of tired children who began to squawk. Slowly, everyone around her stood, collected their belongings and bags, reached for the hands of children, and moved down the carriage towards the open doors. Elizabeta stayed close to her parents, Josef and Berta, and when her mother asked her to make sure she held her little sister's hand, Elizabeta clasped Louisa's fingers in hers. Her 9-year-old sister looked up at her, her hair coming loose from her thin plaits. "Wir sind hier, Louisa," Elizabeta said. Louisa nodded, her eyes wide and frightened. They shuffled to the end of the carriage and stepped off the train onto the platform. Dirt crunched underfoot. Moths danced and crashed into the lights hanging overhead. This wasn't even a station, Elizabeta realized. It was more like a siding in the middle of a field. The unexpected chill hit Elizabeta and iced her throat. Her father had told her, promised her, that Australia...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?